Right, so welcome back to the welding section. I've turned the workshop lights off in an attempt to get a better picture, and I've set up the torch there so it's shining on the work. For you and me, I need that on as much as hopefully that helps you see. If I zoom in too far, you can't see the whole picture, and if I'm dotting around with the welder, then obviously that will make a difference. I'll show you this first section, just how I start the job, and then what I'll do is I'll record it and speed it up a little bit and do it as a montage for the rest of it, because it might take me sort of 3/4 of an hour to do this and you don't want to see that. Maybe you do, I don't know. If you do, by all means, feel free to tell me. So I'm going to start with that first spot where you can see that little yellow clamp. So I'm going to start here. I've fitted my job piece up so that I am happy with it. I'm clamped in here. I might cut a spot here, purely because that overlap is very slight there. And I just want to hold this up so I can remove that clamp and move it along to pull this in as I go along. Okie dokie. So I'll grab the welder, grab my lid. I've turned the welder up to number 4 again. Don't know why I'm shouting, you're still on the microphone that's clipped to my chest. I've turned the welder up to number 4 again. Make sure the wires are straight as possible, as ever. And I'm going to try and get into there. I will have to move the light. Sorry about that. I'll bob it back in a second. Can't see. You end up inevitably putting the light exactly where you're in the way of. So I think that's got it. It has. I can smell the clamp melting, so that's obviously worked. It's like a scene from The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. Right, so absolutely petrified. I keep apparently things I'm putting on. Would you believe that's stronger than that piece? Goodness me. Right, so what I'll do there then is I'll bob a spot of weld on there where it's touching. The job is very fluid. You do have to change occasionally. You have to think on your feet. It's not like river rafting where you have to think literally quickly. But and then what I'll do is I think I'll put a spot here. Yeah, I need to turn the power down for that a little bit. It's a lot thinner, that material. Burnt a little hole, but never mind. It's there, it's held. So I can now remove that clamp from there, spin it around to this side. Now then, this section isn't as fitted as I'd like it to be, so I need to just give that a little adjustment with the chisel and the hammer. So I'll just grab that now. Bear with. Whoops. I tend to find small tap with a big hammer works better, but you know, do it however you find comfy. That's gone in lovely. That's gone in lovely. Across the door, slammed again. Yesterday it took a fair liking to slamming on my fingers. Saturday, sorry. Right, so I'm going to bob now, weld up that seam there. A little slower this time. A little slower, just make sure I'm not burning through constantly, which I am a little. That's fine. Okay, you can see here, I'm hoping you can see this on the camera without my head being in the way. Excuse me. You can see the undersill bubbling out there. Now these are in places where obviously this panel I haven't touched, so I can't get in behind that to get rid of it. And that's underseal and treatment potentially wax oil, which, although it's great at saving rust, it's an absolute living nightmare when you've got to weld after it. In my experience, it does tend to drip and make an awful mess of you. Again, drips and burns while it's dripping. It's a horrible, horrible substance to have to deal with as a welder. However, you can see it bubbling up there as it's boiling. Right, so I need to try and push this out now. So what I'm going to have to do is get a couple of longer drifts. So what I'll do is I'll pause you a little bit there until I'm happy with that. Of course, there may be a couple of different methods I need there. So I'll just pause you a bit. So after a moment of thought there, sorry, I paused there. I thought the camera had fallen over. Just unplug the welder. What I've thought is, you see, what I'm trying to do here is pull this section to here, to this part here. So move this original inner floor section to the new section that I've made. And what it's doing is, because this pressing here is very strong, it's trying to pull my piece to that, which is not what I want. I want it, this is nice and straight and flat what I've done. I want to retain that and reshape this to meet it, which is difficult because I can't get in behind it to hit it straight with a hammer. Now, over the years, I'm hoping you can see this, I've developed a huge supply of blunt hammers and chisels and knocking implements. This super long chisel, stuff like that. But what I think I'm going to actually do is try and make my piece more solid than the original piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap this flange back on the back here, hoping you can see that. I'm going to tap this flange back a little here and weld that in. So I've started that. I'm using the back of my wood chisel. So what I'm doing is I've turned to the flat edge out, and I'm just putting it a few millimeters out from the edge, and I'm just going to give it a tap in like that. A nice solid tap. And that is bringing that in lovely, just closing up any minor gaps and improving the fit. Now, I appreciate all this takes time. These are all the parts of the job that the customer never sees. So in a way, it's quite nice that you are seeing it. Getting a good job always takes longer than you think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crank the welder up, because this is thick steel. This is thin steel, and at some point I'm going to cut these strings off my hoodie because they're driving me insane. That's a good tight fit there. I think I might just push it back a little with the chisel as I do the weld, just to ensure it's super tight, because I want a really good solid fit that then I can use to hold it in place. It's no use if everything's vibrating. As you hit it, everything just bounces away from you, so you need to keep that solid. So I'm going to turn the welder up, crank the amps up another setting. I'm not adjusting my wire feed, very rarely do, to be quite honest with you. It ends up like a challenge. I try to weld everything on the same settings. No idea why. I just don't really get out much. And what I'm going to do is just going to force that like that. Yeah, no. Believe it or not, that Splatterfest there actually did weld it. It's ironic. Whenever you don't want it to weld, it does. So a good strong weld there. That's beautiful. Give the weld a tap. No idea why, but that pulls it in tighter. Give that one a tap in with the old chisel. Still just using the wood chisel, just gently rather than cutting with it. I'll get that top one, that's a good fit. Lovely that. Beautiful. Over the moon with that. I'm just going to give that a tap in now, all the way. I want to tap in the inner edge, otherwise all you do is bend the outer edge towards it. You're probably all sat here welding, watching me weld, thinking, God almighty, I can do it better than that. I don't know why he's doing that. In which case, by all means, tell me. Got it? You'll notice because the metal is moving, and metal always moves when you weld it, I still give them another tap afterwards just to make sure the fit is still there. The reason my wire is being a pain like that is because there's some detritus falling inside my welding shroud, and because the threads have gone on my welding shroud, I've taped it to the front of my welding nozzle, so I can't get it off, basically. If I do take it off, that's it, the day is over. And it keeps trying to weld itself together. I'm going for nice neat welds in here in case I can't get to grind them back. I mean, I always go for neat welds anyway, but that's one of the main reasons I'm trying to keep it as good as possible. I'm really, really pleased with that fit, actually. I know you can't see it from there, but I'll pick you up in a second and let you have a look. I'm just gonna... Yeah, I think that's all right. Just want that bottom one in a little bit tighter. It's just getting into hit it at the appropriate angle there. Oops. Let's see. Right, this one's going to be a bit delicate because there's a little bit of a step there, so I might have to just build a two-part spot. Yep, that's gone all right. Nope, it's actually gone okay, that. And, bearing in mind that's the most difficult one to get to, it's really neat and won't need grinding back, which is a double advantage. Right, so, just bob you off the tripod and let you have a look at that. So I've welded all those in there. Okay, famous last words, there you go. All those spot welds down there now. So this piece is now, that form is retained. So this part, this shape is retained by that where it's welded to that, because this is now all one piece and holding it solid. So although I could dent it, it's not, as you can see probably at the front there, it's not moving much when you give it a tap, which means I can now use that to pull this part to, rather than it pulling this part to that part. Now here, I don't think it ever would have done, quite honestly, but here it really is doing. Right, so I'm going to facilitate a weld in there, and then I'll come back to you. Right, I'm going to try and record this for what turns out to be the third time. For some reason, my phone either switches itself off, or it doesn't record, or it doesn't record the sound, or whatever. I have no idea what's going on here, but I did just put my phone on the roof of the car and it slid off. So my phone is now looking like it's been through a war zone. I set fire to the curtain I was laid on, got a little flame on it. That's now outside soaking in water to try and put it out. The welder tip came loose. It was spitting a little bit, as I sort of explained in the last section. I've tightened that back in. I've welded these, welded around here. As I've just explained 3 times, so I'm going to skim over it a bit more now. This is a continual weld, as you can see. These bumps here, these larger bumps, those are where I've welded over the spot welds that were holding it together. The fit is now pretty good. It's moved up at the back there. It's in place at the back where that return lip is I put on, so the spots are ready to go in there. Not going to do that yet. I think I'm going to weld around on the floor here, here, here. I may put a bottle jack up underneath just to hold it up. And then what I'll do is I'll put a couple of spots of weld on here where that drip channel is. And then I can stretch the metal up to the original floor around it. Okay. So I shall put the shape into that afterwards. Done that before, works really nicely. The floor underneath has been cleaned off. Probably can't see it without the torch. What I've done is I've wiped it with thinners because it was under seal. And what you tend to find is under seal moves around as you melt it. So I've left that under there, all clean and ready to rock and roll. So yeah, next stage is to weld that in, and I'll let you have a look once I've done it. So what I've done there is I've managed to weld that in all the way on the top. Okay, this is straight out of the welder, as you can see. I haven't run the flap disc or anything like that over it, and it is now all welded inside. That section is now fully welded on the interior. What I am going to do now is flap disc that off. In fact, actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to weld it on the outside first, because obviously it thins the metal a little as you flap disc it. So what I might do is flap disc this section here on the inner arch, which I don't need to, on the, sorry, inner sill area, type floor area. I don't need to weld in there again. I'm going to put a spotter weld in that very corner there, because it looks like there's a small hole. It's not a hole really, it's just a gap in the section, but there, the tip of my finger. And I just want to make sure that's well held there before I spot weld underneath, although this can't move. It is now a lot solider in this corner, okay? So I'll weld round underneath, or I'll flap disc that first and then weld round underneath, and I'll bring you in and let you have a look at that section all finished off. As you can see by the welding, it is a series of spots. Basically, I move about 1 millimetre at a time. You can move quicker. That will make a smoother flow, so you've less to grind off, which obviously saves time and makes the job a lot easier. However, what I find is if I just go a little bit steadier, it prevents burn through in any places which, you know, this floor isn't actually thin here. It seems to be fine, but just in case you've any doubts, and if you've been shaping the metal and forming it or anything like that, it thins it a little bit. So I just err to the side of caution. Does it take a while to grind back? Probably an extra 30 seconds, if anything. From this angle, you can also see the spot welds I was talking about earlier. This one here was where I missed, because I did it by pushing it out, closing my eyes and welding. And I missed completely and welded it here, which is annoying, but there you go. That's a spot weld that was just holding it all together. This is where the dinted area was here, where my fingers are. And as you can see, it's pulled that pretty well back. Obviously, this section still has to go in once I've welded it, but I'll be fabricating that next. Right, okay. I'm going to get some grinding done and some welding done. Talk to you in a minute. Okay, so now I've got that section welded in. So I just went to pick my phone up. I'll attempt to move the light so you can see. So that is now all welded in and ground back. Sorry, keep putting my finger over the lens. I haven't ground those spot welds back. I don't actually know if I can get in there to do that, but we'll have a look at that in a second. So as you can see now that that's all ground off, that is absolutely one permanent piece. Try to get the shadows right so you can see it appropriately. Let's try that. So it's now in there. There's no gaps, there's no holes, there's no pinholes anywhere through it. Now, obviously I've welded it inside and outside, and then I've ground it back. Some areas will need a slight more grinding back. I don't like to go too heavily at this stage, but this floor section is now, if I can position the light so you can actually see, nice and solid. I've welded it, you can see the burn throughs there. I've spot welded it on the outside. I'll show you those in a sec. Obviously, it was welded down the corner anyway. I did that before I put it in, and it's welded all the way around on the inner sill there. There's a slight divot there, which I wish wasn't there. However, it's because this was a little bit out of shape, and I struggled to pull it back. I did get it, but it's not as perfect as I'd like it. But I think it'll be absolutely fine. I don't think there should be any problems. So if I whip round underneath, I'll just show you all these tools. I've basically used every one of those just doing this section under the floor. The detritus on the floor is what's ground away. I dread to think what my lungs look like, but there you go. I know I have literally just welded that. So if I can just get the torch and clip her up under there so you can see. That is straight out the gun. I have ground off afterwards, so it's not... Obviously what I mean is I haven't ground any of that back. I've spot welded these. They're a little bit scruffy, but I wanted to make sure I got a really good metal build up on there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and grind those off in a sec. I'm not going to grind the whole floor back, because once the sills are on and everything's covered up and the outer sills, the inner sills and all that is done, then I can get her up on the ramp and just do these just nice and easily stood up, but rather than laid on my back like this. I've filled part of that part in there. That's where the metal overlaps on the outside. And that's that little tiny pinhole there that I just nicked. It's actually a nick with the grinder. So I'll just weld that up afterwards as well. But yeah, these just need grinding back now, but that's made a nice section. As you can see, I've rolled it round these sections, and that's that other piece in the floor there that you probably can't see, but it is there where the rain channel used to go, like this one here. It continued down there. It did actually come down here, and I don't have that anymore, purely because I didn't want to pull the panel to all sorts of different shapes, because it's quite a complex shaped and sized piece. You can see how that now makes a nice strong box in here, and now the strength of the car has improved. It's not all there yet, because there's obviously still all this rotten detritus, but this is a lot better now. So this corner is now a solid corner again, at least, to build off. And the next stage now is to simply make a new cross member to go in the base there. That's pretty easy. It's just a folded piece. What I need to do first is clean this area and just see where the rock continues to, because as you can see, there's a little bit in the corner here. He says pointing the torch over it rather than at it. Sorry. It's been one of those weekends this weekend. So I have this section here to repair and put that piece back in. It does actually go up over here. So there's going to be a seam across here and across here. And then it's just a rolled section. So what I'll do is I'll cut a big piece to come here and then cut that section out and then weld on a flange like I did with the other pieces here and up the edge here and then stitch it all in. Okie dokie, off we go. So we're back again. Sorry, just walking around the workshop. I'm going to lead into this bit with a sort of a little story, but it's not a story per se. It's just a quick insight. When people ring you up or they come and see you and they send you a load of pictures over the interwebs and they say, there it is, it's pretty good, my car, it needs a little bit of welding here and there, and they say, how much is that going to cost? And I go, well, to be honest, I charge by the hour predominantly, because although I can give you an estimate, inevitably there will be more rot than you think there is. And they go, oh yeah, I know, but it's pretty good underneath and blah, 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 blah. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that because this chap said it. He actually didn't. We believed it was better underneath. However, so before my dinner, I sprayed a little bit of, I brushed a little bit of red oxide in there because I was about to make this section to come in here and replace that part here. Now, that's the piece I took out, and I was debating whether to save that and weld it back in. That hole that was there, but to be quite honest with you, it's so thin and crusty around the edges, I don't think it's worth trying to save any of that. I'll just do away with the hole. So yeah, that draws me. I'll have to apologise in advance. The torch has gone completely flat to this corner. So as I knew there was a little bit of rot here, I've literally just taken the welding torch away from it. So that's heavier than anything you can actually imagine. And I started cleaning up here. There were some braze marks on this reinforced, which is the heel board where it comes up. And obviously it's brazed from the factory in there. And I was trying to get rid of the brazing because it spits and does all sorts of nasty things to you. And then I started to clean up and up and up. And this piece I've put in here. Now, this isn't normally how I would do this. This part goes in the outer arch. It's part of this section here, which is the cross member, and it rolls up and outside this inner arch, and then the inner arch goes over it and spot welds through it. Very, very weird way of doing it. However, weird or not, that's how it's built. So normally, obviously, the rear suspension would all be dropped off, but this is more of a repair job than a restoration. So my customer doesn't want to go to the expense of me taking a day to get the back axle off and blah, 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 blah. So I've done it in the best way that I physically can. Now, this section I've put in here replaces that lip inside where the bodywork comes up. And what I'm going to do is the shape's a tiny bit off at the minute. You can see there's more curve on here than there is here from me cutting it. Now, whether that's supposed to be straight or not, I don't know, but I've put a little extra curve in here just to match it. This piece here is what was left of the outer arch that I've reprofiled there, but I think I didn't need to do that. I've just put it in just to be on the safe side, because I think the outer part of the inner arch, yeah, this is the inner arch, then there's an outer arch underneath here. I think that welds up to there or over there, but I've put that in just to be on the safe side. It can obviously be nicked back out at a later date. So this seam here will need grinding down. I've actually welded that across here. I can't get to weld it outside because of the suspension. So I've just put a nice sort of bead weld across there that I will grind back into that corner. And then this section here shouldn't actually be here. I've added this extra to tie this to this, to this, to that, and to put some strength back into the material. So I've cut all this corner out. That there was the bulk of that corner. All those odds and sods on the floor there that I've chopped out. And that's what I've done there. Now, there's a row of spot welds up here, you can see, and I believe that is I've literally no idea, quite honestly. There doesn't even feel like there's a panel under there, but they feel like spot welds. So I'm assuming that this part here that I've put in at the bottom should connect into that. So there may be a small gap there, but that, you know, I can always, if needs be, I can take the wheel off, weld that up solid on the inside. I have to say, the Austin 1100 here is one of the most complex shaped cars I've ever dealt with. It's a very complicated shape, but they are a very rigid structure, to be fair, and they do handle very, very well, you know, like a Mini. A lot more complicated than a Mini. So I'm just going to whip the flat disc over here, okay, over here, to make that smooth again, and then I will make a section to go over here, just again with my 1mm overlap all the way down, put a lip on it, and it's going to go across here. And that's going to be that whole piece now that can go in, rather than trying to make all this and this and this and this and this all in separate pieces, welding them together and faffing about. It is a literal nightmare in here, because if you get 1mm off, it's going to be a nightmare. That's why I chose to do this. Before I do that, I'm going to grind all this back and put a section in here to restore the bottom of the arch. That was absolutely rotted out. This was rotted out in different places, ironically. This was rotted here. The inner arch was rotted here. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? So what I'm going to do now is, as I say, just whip that, neaten that up a little bit on there, make my new section come down the edge of that there. It doesn't touch the bottom of that, so that I could actually leave that in if I wanted to, but I want to take that out and make it nice and neat and tidy. And then it'll go up the edge of here, so it's nice and flat, and nobody knows I've ever been there, apart from a little wiggle down there. And I will reiterate this pressing in here once I've made the section. Right, off we go. Okay, so quick apology, zoned out a bit there and got completely in the game. So I've ended up making a piece there without talking you through it, but to be honest, I've done it in the same way as the others. So I've obviously got that cleaned up in there and ready. It's painted on the inside, but I've had to clean the edge off. I've cleaned that off just for welding because it makes a neater job. Can I burn through it? Yes. But unfortunately, in some places, I'm not going to be able to get to paint, not going to be able to get to grind back. So I'd rather it do a nice clean weld rather than throwing up any spatter from, you know, contaminants. I've painted the inside of the panel I've made. This is just a 90-degree fold. There's a split there. I don't know how I did that. I did that with the guillotine inadvertently, but I'll weld that back up once it's in. I've put an edge piece on it. So I've shaped it, put an edge piece on it. And the two holes where my fingers are to get to the mounting bolts there. Okay, so that now fits into there. Thus, just hooks under that piece there, so I can do a nice seam weld down the edge. And that just fits in like that. Okay, so if I move my fingers now, you can see it's a nice, decent fit all the way around the edges. Obviously, I'll need to tack it in and then just ease these back to the right position. But it does actually fit really nicely in there when I can get to hold it down. But I need both hands. So yeah, going to get that in and then hopefully start along the floor edge. I'm going to draw close to today's video. I'm sorry I haven't put... I'm going to draw close to today's video. Sorry, I just put my thumb on the stop position. I usually do my montages, but sometimes when I put the music on, YouTube says that it's a copyright issue and they sort of won't let me sort of post the music on them. So I deleted the music, but they still won't let me do it. So they demonetize any videos that have got copyright music on, apparently. Now, this music I've used in all my videos. Sometimes it throws up a copyright, sometimes it doesn't. I make sure it's free to use, get it off Clipchamp. It's all supposed to be free to use and copyright free. So I don't really know how to deal with that at the moment. So what I'm going to do is sort of kill the montages for a little bit. I don't know if it's the amount of time I use or what. There doesn't seem to be anything in the rules. So anywho, I'm going to now probably weld that in. It is getting quite late. It's getting not dark outside. You can see it's still bright, but it is sort of dozing over. I'd like to get this in today, and I'd like to also get that piece fully removed today and maybe a new piece welded in, but that might be tomorrow's job. So I shall continue on with the work, and I'll show you how it's going as it's coming along. The next job after this cross member is to do the inner floor edge here, obviously, and the inner sill, which is the next layer beyond that. And then I can get ready to actually fit the outer sill, which I'm hoping won't be too big a job. I've got an idea in mind for that may or may not work. It needs a good clean up first, and then we'll have a look. Cheers for that. Thank you. Bye-bye.